We can't talk about Seth without talking about the Green Hornet.
Don't forget where you came from, pal.
It's obvious. Everyone was saying, James was dead up there. But I think that was Anne Hathaway's fault. I mean, fuck her for trying, like at all. How dare she attempt in some way to entertain the millions of people trying to escape? But not my guy, James. Not my boy, James. Okay.
Movies? Johnson now. I keep forgetting it. He's the last guy I should be making jokes about. Literally fucking kill me. Never stop butt fucking each other.
Hey, Jonah, I'm assuming you're here because Seth is? People. But I own you, Jonah. I fucking own you. If I try to buy you on iTunes, it would say, are you sure you want to purchase? Because you already own this fuck.
And what does my man Bill do? Boom! He goes ahead and books himself a T-Mobile commercial. Who's laughing now, Lorne Michaels? My man Bill is. And look. No, look. I love you, Bill.
I saw the movie The Guilt Trip. Seth, what was it like working with Barbra Streisand? And how did you two tell each other apart? Like, they don't allow abortions.
I'll start with the Jewiest and work my way down. Sarah Silverman is here.
Jonah Hill is here. Jonah is so dumb that when he had me over for a dinner party, I overstayed my welcome and he pretended to be tired so I would leave without getting my feelings hurt. Just asked me to leave. But I did want to stay.
Andy Samberg is another friend of mine. I love him. And now that he's got his new TV show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I'm assuming is about this Brooklyn cop who tried to make it in the movie business but failed and got sent back to TV. My only question is, Andy, when the show gets canceled after 5 episodes, are you gonna do a different cell phone commercial, or are they gonna turn Bills into a two-hander for both of you guys? Andy's awesome.
But seriously, Seth, what's up with your gigantic tux? I'd be swimming in that thing. If I could swim, burned you, I can't swim. Roastmaster, check.
Andy Samberg is here. And he plays a cop on his new Fox show. His first case will be investigating the disappearance of his new Fox show.
Jonah Hill is here. Yes. I do think one day Jonah will win an Oscar. Meyer, Hot Dog Eater of the Millennium Award. Look, this guy is a huge star. He's hanging out with the Brad Pitts and the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world. If I was hanging out with those guys, you think I'd still get brunch with Nick Kroll? No, of course not. That's how successful Jonah is. He had to get new friends. That's my new career goal, to never see Nick Kroll again.
Aziz, Natasha, Nick Kroll, I'm assuming you guys are James's friends from high school. But I think that is so dope that you guys are willing to get up here even though no one knows who the fuck you guys are. He's famous in, like, Silver Lake, but who gives a shit, right?
Seth Rogen. You're welcome, you Harry Canuck. I, Hollywood, made the world accept you. I put you on a movie poster and I said, deal with it. And then I put Barbra Streisand on that poster and the world said, no. The Guilt Trip. Listen, if I wanted to watch two ugly Jews weaving through traffic, I'd watch Seinfeld's web series.
A lot of people are live tweeting the show tonight. Speaking of 140 characters no one gives a shit about, Bill Hader is here. Bill's a great impressionist. Right now he's doing an impression of a guy who really regrets leaving SNL.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Seth Rogen. Let him hear it. God. Seth Rogen is so Jewish. Seth Rogen is so fucking Jewish. Anyway, I'm excited to be here tonight. Many of you might not know this, but Seth Rogen has a writing and directing partner named Evan Goldberg. What does this other guy look like that you're the face of the operation? I assume he's like a sweaty Orthodox Jew eating a pastrami sandwich. Hey, Sethy, yeah, I added 9 dick jokes on page 4. And I was thinking that the guys are friends, and then they're not friends, and then at the end of the movie, they're friends again. And also, they should smoke a lot of ganja, Sethy.
Nick Kroll is here. Yes. Nick Kroll is the scary Jewish face Mel Gibson runs from in his dreams every night. Jonah Hill is here. A lot of people compare Jonah to a young Belushi, Jim Belushi. Jonah's actually started to move away from comedy. It happens 5 minutes into his movie, The Sitter.
Can we talk about my buddy Seth Rogen? Come on. I adore this guy. I fucking adore this guy. He's a great writer, a great friend, and we can't talk about Seth without talking about the Green Hornet. We just can't, right? Because every person in the world is like, the Green Hornet lost so much money. But that's not true. It didn't lose that much money. I mean, every single person in the world fucking hated it, but it didn't lose that much money. And that's the goal after all, right? To make terrible movies that don't lose that much money. Seth's fucking awesome.